In this video, we learn how to integrate 3D geometries onto HDR environments or photographic backplates using a combination of dome light and the available matte options in the Redshift Object Properties window.
Hey folks, welcome to MoGraph Plus. This video is a free sample from our course, The Ultimate Introduction to Redshift for 3ds Max. It's a massive 13 hours course in which we explore all the aspects of Redshift for Max thoroughly. Make sure to check it out, the link is in the description. Also be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos.
To integrate your 3D models to a photographic plate, you need a backplate or a photographic plate and the matching HDRI for that plate. I've included a photo and its matching HDR image from HDRIhaven.com. First, let's add a Redshift dome light and load the Skylit Garage HDR image. Now we can start IPR. I'm going to hide the ground plane geometry so we can see the HDRI a bit better. And as we are in ACES and this is an HDR image, we need to change the color space to Scene Linear Rec 709 sRGB. We can take a look at the backplate to see what we are working with. And now we need to rotate the HDR image to match it with the backplate so the lighting will be consistent. Let's flip the dome light horizontally and set the Z rotation to around 75 degrees. Now it matches with the photographic backplate. We don't need to see the HDR image, we just want to see its contribution to the lighting and instead see the backplate photo in the background. So let's come down to the backplate section of the dome light and load the backplate photo that comes with this HDR image. The next step would be to match the camera with the photo, just move it around until it matches. Or use utilities like Perspective Match to match the camera perfectly. Let's make our ground plane visible again. You notice it has a default redshift material and the dome light casts the shadow of the car on it. We basically want to hide the ground plane but keep the shadows it catches from the car, so we want it to be a shadow catcher. For that, let's select the ground plane. Right-click and open up Redshift Object Properties window. Go to the matte section and enable it, then press OK. Now the ground plane is turned into a matte object, that is why it is no longer visible. If I want to turn it into a shadow catcher, we just have to check this Enable Shadow option under the Shadow section and that's it. And now the car is integrated into the photo. We can take a look at some of the more important options here. First, we have this Show Background. When this option is enabled, we can see the defined background image in the matte object. Otherwise, the matte object will be black. If I unhide this sphere object that has a very reflective material, you notice the reflective sphere does not know that the ground plane is turned into a matte object and still reflects its original material. To make it aware, we just need to enable this Apply to Secondary Rays checkbox and that solves the issue. When this option is checked, it enables the matte object override for secondary rays, such as reflections, refractions, and GI. Down here in the shadow section, we can control how the shadows look. We can change the color of the shadow and its transparency. We can use these two options to tint the color of the shadows to match a photographic backplate. We can steal the shadow color using this color picker from underneath this car, or maybe from here. If I check the alpha channel, we get a solid white color. When this shadow effect alpha option is enabled, the intensity of the matte shadows will be stored in the alpha channel and the alpha channel would contain the shadow mask. For now, let's disable it. We also have this alpha contribution scale up here. By default it is set to 1 and therefore the matte object will contribute to the alpha channel, and when set to 0, it does not. For now, let's set it to 1. And then we have this reflection, refraction, and diffuse contribution amounts. They scale the amount of reflection, refraction, and diffuse or GI visible from the underlying materials that have been overridden. In this case, we know we have applied a default Redshift material to our ground plane which has some reflections, but the reflection of the car is not visible on the ground plane. If I increase the reflection scale to 1, we start to see some reflections as well. For now, set the reflection scale back to 0. If I change the diffuse color of the ground plane material to something like an electric pink, you notice the material does not affect the indirect lighting at all, but when I start increasing the diffuse scale, you notice how the material applied to our matte object contributes to the GI as well. For now, let's set the diffuse scale back to 0. And change the ground plane material's diffuse color to its default mid-gray color. One last thing I want to talk about is this affected by matte lights option. If I turn on this pink disk area light, you notice it casts its shadows and the ground plane catches the shadows. But what if we want this light source to actually illuminate the matte object instead? First, we need to come to the Redshift object properties of the ground plane and enable this affected by matte lights option. And also make sure the diffuse scale for the object is more than 0. Let's set it to 1. Then we need to select the light source, enable this matte shadow illuminator. When we do that, the light is no longer casting any shadow on the matte object, because the matte surface is expected to be actually illuminated by this light when this option is enabled. And when we enable this affected by matte lights option for the matte object and increase the diffuse scale, they allow the matte surface to be illuminated by the matte shadow illuminator light. For now, let's hide this pink disk light. And make sure the sphere is hidden as well. Let me show you a more practical example. Turn on this headlights for the car. You notice when the matte shadow illuminator option is disabled for the headlights, they don't illuminate the matte surface, but the moment we check matte shadow illuminator, the headlights illuminate the surface as they should. That's enough for now. In this video, we learned how to integrate 3D geometries onto HDR environments or photographic backplates using a combination of dome light and the available matte options in the Redshift Object Properties window. See you in the next one.
Make sure to visit our website mographplus.com or our Gumroad page at gumroad.com/mographplus and check out our premium CGI and rendering courses for Cinema 4D, 3ds Max, Maya, Arnold, Corona, V-Ray, Redshift, Octane, and so on. See you in the next video.